Thank you. Thank you. All right. Yeah, love that. Well, welcome everybody on behalf of ITR and NFIB. I just want to welcome everybody here. This is our 7th annual tax luncheon. I think we got a great program ahead. I want to thank, of course, all the sponsors that helped put this together. Hello? Is that better? All right. Thank you. Wow, that was distracting. Thank the sponsors, of course, both of our members, legislators who are here. I got a little bit of bad news and good news. The bad news, our Attorney General had to fly out last minute. I think she's doing some great things, so we wish her all the best in her travels. But she is a true champion of the small business owner and the taxpayer, so she's doing great things. The good news, we're still cutting taxes in Iowa, thanks to these people here and all those. We got 2 huge bills in the Iowa Senate this year that will help cut some of those taxes. Obviously, we've got the unemployment insurance tax bill that the governor has proposed for the 2nd year in a row, and we have Tim Goodwin here with IWD who's helping run that. And then we have the big property tax bill, which has 2 subcommittees today, and Dan and Bobby Kaufman over on the House side, and all the legislators have heard what people are talking about as they go around the state. And property tax, I don't think you can find a more visceral issue than people's property taxes. So we thank them for all the work that they're doing on that. And then, of course, there's some flyers on your tables on the impacts of what will happen to our small businesses if the 20% small business tax deduction isn't extended at the end of the year. And I know Congress and the new administration is working on a new tax package to help save those dollars, get those and keep those in the small businesses' pockets so that they can hire new people, expand, and do the things that they do best. But we got a great program. Thank you very much for being here again. And thank you to all the new faces. But right now I want to introduce our MC for the day, former House Majority Leader, supposedly a great baseball player, great golfer, Chris Hagenow.
So yeah, I want to talk about my baseball career. Some of you may not know I was a high school baseball player, sort of. I wasn't very good, and I didn't play a lot. But one time, I pitched. Did you know this, Jack? Did not. Okay. I pitched one time. So we were playing the crosstown, counterpart school, a big 4A school, and we were the little school. And we were predictably getting blown out, and it was sort of all hands on deck. And so coach throws me in, and I'm out there. I come into the game with the bases loaded and nobody out. And I stand up there on the hill, and I threw that sucker right down the middle, belt high, and it was promptly on the very first pitch deposited over the left center field fence. So I proceeded to give up 3 or 4 more hits and a couple more runs until it was coach came right back out, gave me the hook, and I was out. My career ERA as a baseball player at any level remains at a solid infinity. I tell you that reason here today for 3 reasons. One, and perhaps most importantly, is that opening day is tomorrow. So that's good. But I thought that was the only good analogy I had of that I'm here pinch hitting today, and you're going to hear more than just me introducing the Attorney General. You're going to have to listen to me speak for a few minutes. So that's my pinch hitting analogy. And I guess thirdly, as I'm going to rattle off a bunch of numbers at you, and if we can get our minds around infinity, then maybe we can dial it back a little bit and understand polling numbers and property taxes a little better too. So that's my TED Talk intro styled thing to get us going here today. But I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate all you being here. I love this event. I love seeing a room full of people that I know agree with the vision of Iowans for Tax Relief and of NFIB, and understanding the importance of all these issues in keeping Iowa strong, keeping Iowa growing, and how much we've done to really set the example for the nation. Iowans for Tax Relief has, if you see, it's not on this logo here, but often if you get our stuff, we're the voice of the taxpayer. And I think that probably sums it up as much as anything. And we've got a bunch of senators here, and I know we're going to have some House members coming in here in a little bit, a few of them at least. They've been very busy up on the Hill. But, and I think all of these legislators will agree with me, and being a former legislator myself, you walk in that building and you are inundated with people with their hand out, and they want just a little piece, or sometimes a big piece, of our tax money, or they want a little special carve out to the tax code for their interest. And it's difficult. It really is to navigate all of that. And sometimes you do those things, and sometimes you say no, but ITR is the voice of everybody else that doesn't have a paid lobbyist at the Capitol. Because when all of those decisions are made, we try to have a voice in the process. And I know these folks here, and for all of them that are here, are really good about helping us have that seat at the table. And that's who we are, and that's why we do it. And I think we've been pretty successful in doing that. I can't say enough about the partners that we have in the legislature here. And I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. But I wanted a little bit, too, because I have to drag this out a little bit because we don't have one of our speakers. But sometimes we are so focused on the next thing that we're doing, and right now it's property taxes that we're going to talk about in just a minute, that we lose sight of what we've done. And the major thing, the generational thing that this organization really tried to help as much as we could was income tax reform. I don't want to miss opportunities to talk about how significant the work that we have done on income taxes is. We've set an example across the country, and I know our speaker coming up, Vance Ginn, we talked about this last night, of just, this isn't something that Iowans talk about. Across the country, you go to policy meetings, you groups of legislators, and they all know what's happening in Iowa. And we are setting the example for the entire nation. And again, I think when we're looking forward to the property tax bill, I think that's instructive because we'd like for that to be an example to local governments as well of how they can do it better. I'm going to take a quick detour on telling the story of how far we've come on property or on income taxes. We started with almost it was an 8.98% top marginal rate, down to a low flat tax of 3.8%, which is in effect right now putting more money into every Iowan's paycheck. It's real money. We get sticker shock from our property taxes, and they're obnoxious, and it needs to be fixed. But sometimes we lose sight of just how much we're saving and how bad things had gotten on the income tax, and let's just not forget that. But as much as Iowa has been an example to the country, I'm gonna take a minute to say one special thanks on this matter. This morning, my friend Jack Whitfer got an award in the legislature, the Hoover Service Award for Uncommon Service. I want to tell you that as much as I'd like to say that Iowans for Tax Relief should take credit for generational income tax cuts, I'm not going to do that. I think we played a role. I think we helped cheer you guys on. I think we created more energy for the issue and helped frame things up. But singularly, Senator Jack Whitfer is responsible for creating where we're at in the environment for this generation of tax cuts that will be remembered not just in Iowa and not just for this time, but across the country and for generations to come. And so, because I have all you here and I have him here, I want you all to thank who is an absolute rock-solid champion on tax policy, Senator Jack Whitfer. And he's a great friend. And yeah, so I would say that anyway. But anyway, so thinking about income taxes, and I want to because I want to frame this up for what we're going to talk about on property taxes. The way it worked, and I hope you all agree with me, for years, going back all the way to probably 2011 when we first started taking control of this, you had more conservative leadership, is that it started with limiting spending, fiscal discipline and fiscal responsibility, and sorting through wants versus needs and holding the line, and then creating the environment to be able to cut those taxes and give that benefit back to the taxpayer. I mean, that's the model, right? It's not complicated. We held the line on spending, cut taxes. And because we did that, we went our ranking in the Tax Foundation from 46th out of all 50 states now to 20th. It bounces around in here, but we're definitely in the top half of all 50 states because we held the line on spending. And I tell you, I think that's, as we look at the property tax problem, that has to be part of the solution if we want to hold the line on the growth in property taxes. So I think a lot of you have seen the polling that we do. I don't know if any of you, if you haven't, that's fine. I'm going to try and walk you through. This is the number part, right? So we got there with infinity. So work with me. We commission a poll 3 or 4 times a year, the ITR Foundation poll, which, John, by the way, what is it? What's the ITR Foundation poll? This is gold standard in Iowa political polling. It is. We've taken the mantle away from Ann Seltzer and the Des Moines Register because, look, I'm not saying that because I'm in a room of friends. I mean, it's objectively true. We've been calling these races. We use a reputable national pollster. We put a fair amount of money behind it, and that our pollster Signal has, again, for I think now the 3rd cycle in a row, had an A rating from these national like Nate Silver and New York Times that do this. So this is quality data. It's not, we don't make it up. I genuinely don't try to tip the scales in any way on this. But so we asked some questions on tax policy in our most latest poll. This was about a month ago that this was in the field. There are a couple of very big tax questions that are in front of you. So this current constitutional amendment proposed one that it would take a 2/3 majority vote in the legislature to raise taxes, right? I know Senator Dawson has championed this, and I appreciate it. 71% of Iowans support that. And 60% of Democrats support that idea. Think about that. How many other issues are out there that get that kind of support across the board? We also asked the question of a 2% growth cap on local government spending, another issue that is being debated right now. Again, on a 2% growth cap, 2/3 of Iowans support that idea, support a growth cap. Again, over half of Democrats. So it cuts across the political spectrum. And we asked another question in there, what are the most important issues to you? And it's there's about 10 different factors in there, but issues of taxes, the economy, and government spending are over half. Of their most important issue when they think ahead to their next vote are those kitchen table financial issues that they're faced with. And they're also saying that well over 2/3 want these kinds of policies. And so I thinking about all of the issues that the legislature faces, it's hard to find one that's a bigger win for a legislator of any party than this kind of stuff. And so the timing is right to work on this. We've got a big bill that Senator Dawson and Representative Kaufman have worked on that accomplishes many of these things. And look, you got several weeks left. I mean, you're going to have to work on it. And I mean, look, sometimes these things take a year or two. They just might. But the Iowans' frustration with their property tax burden is not going away. That's evergreen, and they want real strong action. I was also thinking, bear with me on the numbers again, but I don't know if any of you have noticed, but there have been a lot of debates lately at the Capitol about eminent domain because people don't want their property being taken. And I am not going into that issue today, so just it's okay. Exhale, everyone. But the issues of eminent domain and taking of one's property really hit home for a lot of people, right? It's pretty personal. We have about 1.5% of the value of our homes being taken away from us every year by way of property taxes. Where's the outrage for that? Are we storming the Capitol for that one? Are we showing up at City Hall? Are we going to a county board of supervisors meeting and saying, I'm overtaxed? And so one of the things that we've been trying to do in addition to supporting the work inside the Capitol to get a good property tax bill done is trying to activate people locally, is to get people to go to their local Board of Supervisors meeting there, because that's, if we're going to preach local control, okay, well, let's do it. Let's show up and go tell them. We had a member that went to one of these budget review hearings recently over in eastern Iowa. And someone that had a fair amount of political sophistication, but rallied about 20 people, and they went to their, I think it was a supervisors meeting, and said, hey, this is too much. You're raising my property taxes again. And the Board of Supervisors didn't really want to hear it. They listened and said, well, you tell us where we're supposed to save. You know, tell us in this budget where we're supposed to save. And I know you legislators are not, and how many times do you hear that from your cities or your counties? How many times you've been lectured about the price of gravel? You know what? Don't care. I mean, care. You should listen to them. Why is it that their budget comes first? Why is it that what government needs comes before what the people need? So I can tell you, having knocked over 50,000 doors in my political campaigns, and you go out on Representative Gustav, you knocked a lot of doors last summer. It was hot, right? I want you to think back. Okay, I'm going to pick on Bill for a minute because he's my law partner and good friend. Bill, you're out, it's July, it's August. You're away from your family, and you're going out, and you're knocking on a door. And it's 95 degrees outside, and you knock on someone's door. And probably the most likely thing they were going to say to you is, you can work on my property taxes, right? I know you told me you heard it over and over. Well, okay. Yeah, okay. But that person you showed up on their doorstep, their voice and their budget matters more. It just does. It has to. So remember that. And you should listen to the cities and the counties. They know the way things work. We should absolutely engage them, right? But those individual budgets, the people that are paying the bills, that has to come first. So I keep that in mind. I think that what these guys are working on is really exciting. I know the amount of, I can't even imagine. We've got actually a current Ways chair and a former Ways chair in the back of the room and in Tom Sands, but the amount of, I know how much time you guys put into this and how complicated it is. I remember walking into the offices and Tom Sands would be giddy. He'd be like, oh, I got some new runs, Chris, look. And he'd be pouring through pages of stuff. And like, oh, that's great, Tom. Just tell me how you want me to vote. But it's year-round, and so I'm excited because so much work's been put into it and setting the stage for not just this year but other reforms in the future because I know how much they care about it, and we're going to get that stuff done. All right, I've probably gone longer than I even intended to, but I had a lot to say. So I want to close with a few other thoughts. We have a major initiative, ITR Local, which is a website, itrlocal.org, which attempts to try and get as much of this information about local spending, city, county, school, out to individuals. And I know a lot of legislators specifically found it really helpful. It can just let you know how your community's doing in relation to other areas. Because, look, there's cities and counties doing a good job. They really are. And they've got some good people out there that are trying to do the right thing, and we should acknowledge that as well. But use that. If there's any information you need it translated, if you're getting ready to go to talk to your city council and just want help with that, please let us know. We love that kind of stuff. I'm supposed to plug my own podcast. I don't really like doing it, but that also, it's the it's gold standard in Iowa conservative podcasts. So check out the ITR Live podcast. I'm supposed to do that. But mostly I just wanted to say thank you to all of you that are here for supporting the vision and the mission. Thank you to our legislators for being partners in all this. And I can tell you that we are genuinely, on behalf of the staff, the staff, the board of Iowans for Tax Relief, our friends at NFIB, we are collectively very excited for the future of the state of Iowa. So I'm going to move it on because I guess I'm the MC. That's what Matt tells me. But I'm going to introduce our next speaker, which is Vance Ginn. And I've gotten to spend some time with Vance for the last several years as I've moved into the policy world, and he is a treat. I asked him to tell me what his titles were, and I said, I'm not going to remember all that. So he is a ITR Senior Tax Fellow, but he's actually a native Texan and has done a lot of work. Specifically, and he's going to go through all this with you, but he had a role in the previous Trump administration in building the federal budget, and it's got some good stories about that. But mostly he's an ITR senior fellow, and we're excited. And I discovered last night that when I finally get around to putting my band together, he's going to be my drummer. And so I'm really excited about that as well. So with that all having been said, my friend Vance Ginn.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure with all of you today. The great state of Iowa. How's everybody doing? Good. It really is a pleasure to be here. I live in Texas, near Austin, Texas. Although I don't claim the People's Republic of Austin, I live in Round Rock, which is just north of Austin. But yeah, some of you know where that's at, maybe? Okay. But it's great to be here in Des Moines, Iowa. We had some good dinner last night, and it's great to meet many of you that are here. I've worked closely with many people in Iowa, given ITRF and my fellowship there, and doing a lot of good work on budgets and taxes and all the great stuff they do there. And my good friend John Hendrickson, who's already been named a couple of times. We've had a lot of good debates over the years, and we'll continue to about a number of things. I've admired this state's commitment to faith, family, and freedom, the very values that shape my own journey from humble beginnings in South Houston. I grew up in a lower-income, single-mother household. We didn't have much. Maybe some of you grew up the same way. But it instilled in me, and my mom did, to work hard, value education, responsibility, and faith. I went to private school from kindergarten to second grade, public school from third grade to sixth grade, and homeschool from seventh grade through 12th grade. So I had all of those types of institutional changes in my life. I played drums, as Chris mentioned, in a hard rock band in my late teens. I know all of you are perfect, right? All y'all are perfect, but not me. Not in my late teens, early 20s. I was not perfect. I'm still not perfect. I'm here by the grace of God. But during that time, I really fell into the rock and roll, the rock star years. We were one of the top 5 hard rock bands in Texas at the time. This is like the late 90s, early 2000s. But we had a great time. But my life, let's just say, was not heading in a great direction. And so May 25th, 2002, I got in a serious car accident where we were racing another car going 120 miles an hour. I told you I made a lot of mistakes. And we hit the back end of another car, rolled 6 times at least, and I got life flighted to Herman Hospital in Houston with a potential brain injury, which maybe I did. That's why I got a Ph.D. in economics, but I won't blame it on that. But by the grace of God, I went home that night. Everybody did that was in the wreck, but it gave me a lot of time to think about and pray about like where my life was heading and how things are going for the future. And I really felt called to let people prosper. And so from going from a single parent household to then being a first generation college student, I feel like God's given me this blessing. And I continue to do it. It's the name of my podcast that y'all should all go check out on any platforms you listen to. It's called Let People Prosper. I'm writing a book about it now as well. But a lot of it also has to do with getting our own responsibility for our own life, have our own ability to do things. And too often when government gets in the way, it removes that responsibility. It removes what we can do in our own lives and the freedom and liberty that we have. And I just think that part is so important overall. I went to Texas Tech University, so not too far. They're in the Sweet 16 on Thursday, so tomorrow, so I'll be watching that. Got a Ph.D. in economics from there, went and taught at Sam Houston State University for a couple of years, and then worked at the Texas Public Policy Foundation off and on for about a decade. And then in 2019, I got a call saying, "Hey, Vance, are you looking for a job?" And I said, "Well, not really, but I'm a free market economist, so I'm always on the market. What do you got?" And it was Russ Vought, who was the acting director of the Office of Management and Budget in the first Trump administration. And he said, "Well, we have an economist position open. Would you be interested?" I said, "Well, I think so." And he started going on a little bit more about it. And I said, "Well, what exactly is this position?" I thought it was a staff economist or something like that. And he said, "Well, it's Chief Economist of the Office of Management and Budget." I almost hung up the phone. I had no idea that coming from South Houston, lower income, where my dad had epilepsy and was having seizures every other day, to being called to the White House was an amazing opportunity. I went there in June 2019. From June 2019 to May of 2020, we moved to McLean, Virginia, where I would drive into the White House. I had a parking space that was right below the old executive office building right across the street. It was a great experience. I got to go into the Navy mess and the West Wing anytime. But during my time there, I also had the opportunity to advise on trade, taxes, regulatory policy, helped write the president's last budget. I also had conversations with some people who became friends, like Peter Navarro, who we disagreed sharply on trade and tariffs and a whole bunch of things, but we had a lot of good discussions while we're there. I warned that tariffs would hurt American consumers and producers and exporters, especially those in agriculture-heavy states like Iowa. And you have to have those trade-offs as part of the discussion. Unfortunately, at that time, those warnings came true for many farmers that were here, right? They caught in the crossfire of retaliatory tariffs, trade wars, and then there was a huge kind of quote-unquote bailout bill to a lot of the ag community as well because of some of that goes on, and it's a concern that I have today with the on-again, off-again tariffs that the Trump administration is talking about, and I'm sure many of you have already maybe felt the brunt of that. I know they have across the country. For there, I've worked with dozens of other groups at Americans for Tax Reform, Club for Growth Foundation. I work with Grover Norquist a lot as well. But I say all that by really wanting to note of how well I think Iowa's doing. It's remarkable. When I go speak at other states across the country, there are very few states that I say are getting it right. And Iowa is one of those states. Iowa and Florida, North Carolina, I think those are the states we've really got to watch. It's not Texas anymore, where I'm at. I would love to stand here as a proud Texan and say Texas is the place, but there's a lot of problems. They're spending too much. Just in the last budget, they increased their budget by 22% in state funds. 22%. That's California. That's not Texas. What the heck's going on? We got high property taxes and everything else, and I'm fighting a lot of those things right now. We don't even have school choice. Iowa has school choice. And though that is the part of Iowa that's starting in the heartland, but moving across the United States. And I love it. Yes. Chris mentioned that there's still challenges, and there will always be some challenges. Having government is a challenge. Our founders of this country knew the challenges that were there. And even before that, we've dealt with challenges along the way. I'm a classical liberal. Milton Friedman is my favorite economist. So I'm not an anarchist or anything like that. I believe in very small government because there are roles for government. National defense, security, a justice system, maybe a few public goods that are out there, because you need order in a free market capitalist system in order for those economic transactions to occur. But we need to do it in a way that's not burdensome to the overall people, to the individuals. Because the more the freedom that you take away, the more control that somebody else has of my own agency, whether it's in my tax dollars, the way I want to start my business, or a number of other things. I recently heard from a small business owner in Cedar Rapids, quote, "For the first time in years, I didn't have to choose between hiring another worker or paying taxes that are too high because those taxes are coming down here." That's powerful. These tax reforms are changing lives. In 2018, as Chris mentioned, Iowa had a complicated multi-bracket system with top rates close to 9%. That's just 2018, folks. It's a few years ago. And the great work that y'all have been doing, and the legislature has been pushing that along with Governor Reynolds as well. And I'm so appreciative of that you're heading toward a flat rate of 3.8% by 2026, I believe. No? It's now. Sorry, this is old, yeah. In January of 2025, I meant to say. 3.8%. That's huge. Yes. With all these things that are going on, not only does the Tax Foundation and their State Competitiveness Index bring it up from they're the last to 20th place now. That's a huge improvement on the tax competition that's out there. The Cato Institute ranked her the most fiscally responsible governor, for Governor Reynolds, in the nation. And she earned the Distinguished Service Award from the Tax Foundation as well. So there's so much that's going on that it's rare that you get this opportunity to applaud and be in the state where this is happening. So I appreciate everything that Iowa's doing and setting the stage for what many other states should be doing as well. But you still have work to do. Iowa's corporate income tax remains graduated. It could be flattened. Ultimately, corporations don't pay taxes, right? People pay taxes. This building cannot pay a tax. And if it starts creating money, let me know. Right? Corporations don't pay taxes. People do. Through a form of higher prices, lower wages, fewer jobs, lower shareholder wealth. This is the way that those costs are passed along. And while some on the left will argue that they should pay their fair share, who is paying fair share? Who decides what that fair share is? It's a subjective determination by an external party of the voluntary transactions that happen in a market system. Along with the property tax reforms that are going on, I think the proposed new 2% cap on property tax revenue or mills is very encouraging. Without strict spending limits as well, kind of like the 2% that Chris mentioned earlier, I think there can be some issues. So some things of cautionary tales on property taxes, which is a lot of where my research has been over the years, is you want it to have as few carve-outs or loopholes as possible in any sort of these reforms. There's an incentive, there are incentives in place for there to be carve-outs for really small populations or no new property. You don't want to put that in there. And I think some of these make sense. But remember, anytime you make carve-outs for one place, you're pushing the burden onto another place. Nothing is free, as Milton Friedman would say. And there's nothing free when you're spending more money that are the taxpayers. It shifts the burden around. So when you put these limitations in place, try to make sure that they have few, if any, carve-outs, and that they're the broadest that you can have. That way the rates stay lower than otherwise. Because ultimately what you want to do is not only just slow the growth rate of property taxes and income taxes and other types of taxes, but hopefully reduce them and bring them down. And I mention this because Texas did some of this back in 2019. And I testified a number of times before the Texas legislature on these types of reforms, that you need a property tax levy that is as low as possible and is broad-based, just like what I just told you. But what did they end up doing? They passed a property tax levies on cities and counties, and they excluded all the special purpose districts because of a population sort of threshold. They made it a 3.5% cap, and then had a majority vote to exceed the limit. So what do you think happened? We had special purpose districts that blew up everywhere. They created more special purpose districts to get outside of the levy limits, right? Incentives matter. There was a natural disaster clause that if there was a natural disaster, then that locality could increase their tax rate to whatever they wanted, basically. And what happened? We had a lot of natural disasters, and that made it to where they got around it. So just be careful is what I say to you on these types of reforms, because I think there are good ways to do it and not so good ways to do it, and just be careful about those. And even if you look at California passed Proposition 13 back in the day, where it basically says your market value and the property taxes you pay can't go above 1% of the market value, and it can't increase 2% per year in the amount that you pay. That sounds good, right? But there's problems with it. What happened is that when you bought your house at $200,000 and you can only go up 2% per year, and the person across the street who has the very same house as you do paid $400,000 this year, now they are paying twice as much in property taxes. So what did that do? That shift the burden to all new home buyers, and many people that are young cannot afford a home in California. That's why they moved to Texas and other places. And so I actually don't like Proposition 13. I think that there are problems with it. And the last thing I'll say about property taxes, and probably some people at ITRF don't agree with me on this, and others don't either, but I'm actually for eliminating property taxes. I say this as someone who believes in limited government, and that government that's closest to the people should govern us best. But what I've seen in Texas and other states is that in red states, we get blue communities that run up taxes and run up spending and then push the burden on everyone else because it filters over to the suburban areas and the red areas. You know what I mean? And not only that, but from a fundamental standpoint, private property rights are so important for us. It's one of our inalienable rights. And if you cannot own your property, even after you pay off your mortgage because you got to keep renting from the government forever, do you really own your property? I would argue that you don't. And until we can own our property, we will not have a well-functioning of an economy and society and family structure than we otherwise would have, because right now property taxes push people out of their homes and they can't leave a legacy for their future. And many young people can't buy into homes because the property taxes are so expensive. And that's not just in Iowa, it's in Texas and many other states across the country. And in fact, you've seen states now, not only Texas, but North Dakota, Nebraska, Florida, and several others that are already talking about eliminating their property taxes. So it's and first and foremost, I should say elimination of the income tax should be first, because that is the most burdensome. So I definitely go to zero on that first. And then you get to think about what's next. What else do you want to cut? Do you want to cut sales taxes or something else? And it all starts with spending less. Iowa's built strong surpluses, more than $2 billion. These are signs that you're over-collecting from taxpayers. I think it's important to have that wiggle room in some of these rainy day funds, but how much is too much? Remember, every dollar that's outside of the productive private sector and in government is not something that can go into investments and job creation in the private sector. So just something to think about there. Many states tie tax relief to revenue triggers. My preference is more of a surplus trigger, where if you limit spending, the surplus above that goes to reducing taxes. And this is because you can allow for more of an incentive to spend less, so that way there's more room for tax cuts. It's like budgeting in your household. You don't splurge because you expect a raise. You cut costs, save, and then invest wisely. According to BLS, Iowa's unemployment rate is 3.3%, with non-farm employment at 1.6 million jobs and growing. The BEA reports your GDP grew 2.3% in Q2 2024, placing you squarely in the middle of the pack. So these are good, solid numbers. But they're not bulletproof. If inflation spikes again or federal support wanes, overspending become underperformance. Sustainable budgeting ensures, and responsible budgeting ensures resilience. Looking at zero-based budgeting, performance-based budgeting, making sure that every dollar that's spent by the state of Iowa and local governments, by the way, are spent on the goals that are put forth by the legislature. So I'd be remiss not to mention tariffs again. I recall sitting with Peter Navarro in the White House debating the economic damage of trade barriers. I vigorously argued about this, but Iowa exported $10 billion in ag goods last year. Restrictions on global trade don't just hurt margins, they hurt livelihoods. And as Frederick Hayek said, if we wish to preserve freedom, it is essential that the discretion of the authorities be reduced as much as possible, and tariffs are the very opposite of that principle. From the soybean fields to Main Street diners, my message today is simple. Iowa has momentum. Iowa is the place that's leading the way across the country and across the globe, and I'm so thankful for that. You've laid the groundwork, yes. You've laid the groundwork for bold reforms, and now is the time to finish the job. I started from nothing and made it to the White House, not because of government programs, but because of freedom, faith, and family. That same formula can work for every Iowan. Let's heed the wisdom of Milton Friedman, who said, "Nobody spends somebody else's money as carefully as he spends his own." Let's ensure we don't allow the government to do just that. So thank you for your time today, and let people prosper. Not the government, but for people to prosper. And I think you're on the right track already. Let's keep this going. I'm glad to do some question and answer or something if we want. If we have time. Okay. Glad to. Yes, sir. Ha. Yeah. Yeah. We need education that matters, that makes a difference. We give young people the future, and also those that will serve the government responsible. Amen. I agree with you. It would be great if Well, it'd be better if Milton Friedman was here, so that way he could do it. But since he's not, yeah, that's right. But there will be other opportunities, hopefully, to make some more of those types of videos, because I agree with you, more of that needs to be out there. Any other questions? Oh, okay. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Now, it's a big fight, right? The local control versus what the state's going on. And I won't say that I know everything about the Iowa Constitution, but the way that most states are created, right, is that the state created the local governments. And so that's one thing. The state does have some control there, right? I also would argue that the local control is really up to the individual. It's not local control of the government. It's local control of the individual. And those times with which local governments are not just preserving liberty and stepping out of the bounds and overtaxing us, I think that is going against the individual liberty of those individuals. And that is a place for the state to step in my view. Anything else? Uh-oh, getting the hook. Hey, thank y'all so much. This has been great.
My name's Chris Ingstad. I get to lead the foundation side of Iowans for Tax Relief. And in that role, I'm often asked to land the airplane. And so that's what I'm going to do on this stage in about 60 seconds, okay, and send you all on your way. With all due respect to Hayek and anybody else that Vance quoted, our founder, David Stanley, said something that I think is equally important, so much so I've got it on the wall of my office. And he says, it's always easy for politicians to spend money as long as the taxpayer keeps quietly paying the bills. And I think that a lot of what we're trying to do inside the Capitol and outside of it is to make sure the taxpayer doesn't quietly pay the bills. In Vance, you're correct. In Iowa, the state is the sovereign, and you're also correct. There's no more local control than that, a homeowner's budget, right? And so all due respect, as Chris pointed out, listen to cities and counties and their needs, but the priority needs to be on the taxpayer. So I just want to say thank yous again. Matt touched on before, but Matt and your team at NFIB, thank you for being great partners, not just for this event, but every day. Thank you for our elected officials for the good work you do and being good partners. Vance, thank you for being up here. We appreciate that too. And the biggest thank you, of course, is to all you members out there. Literally, Matt and his team and Chris and our teams, we couldn't do what we do without you all. So thank you for that support. Thank you for being here. Look forward to another good event next year. Thanks a lot.